Okay, Matt, let's have a look at who is online to be going down from the Premier League into the Championship, or should I say back into the Championship, as it often is lately in the English football pyramid. And I hate to say it, but there's kind of three narrative threads here. One, Wolves are really bad and they're continuing to be really bad, and it's very worrying. Two, Ipswich had probably their worst weekend so far this season. And I'm quoting from the wonderful Craig and Dave on the Blue Monday podcast, even though I do tend to agree. And take about Leicester off the mark. And look, we'll go through team by team. But as much as it kind of pains me, because I know the type of football I like, and I'm a Steve Cooper fan, by the way, sometimes the ability to keep a clean sheet in the relegation zone is extremely, extremely vital. And when we're seeing the goals against columns of certain of these teams that we're about to talk about, then, maybe the capacity to work on that skill is something we need to see from certain other teams we're about to mention. Let's start with Wolves, Matt. I know we talked about them quite a lot, I think 2 shows ago. And I know you've spoken about Brentford earlier in the show. They were hopeless at the back. You're bottom of the table. You're playing against a team that always scores in the first minute, and you're giving away 3 headers and 5 goals. Are we now at the point where it could be realistic that by the time we get back for the next show, Wolves might be looking for a new manager?
Yes, we highlighted these fixtures, didn't we, Ben? They were bottom a few weeks ago, and we said they got Liverpool, Brentford, Man City, Brighton. And Brentford looked the most winnable, and they've come away without even a draw. The game itself, I mean, we've obviously mentioned Brentford's great start. It's easier said than done, stopping Brentford in the first minute, I guess. But it seemed like there was some fight about Wolves, but they just kept chasing Brentford to get back into the game. So they pulled it back twice, I believe. But they were just all over the place at the back, and Brentford found themselves 5-2 up, and then Wolves did pull one back late through Ike-Nori, which kind of makes the scoreline look maybe a little bit less embarrassing. But look, we've had great Wolves fans sharing their thoughts, and they're highlighting it's the defence that's the issue, and that kind of scoreline reflects that, doesn't it? They're not having so many problems scoring goals, but considering how many they're conceding, and they've got Man City next, goodness me. I wonder what conversations are going on at Wolves right now. I think maybe O'Neill could be saved by the fact that between these international breaks, you've got the 2 hard games, but maybe here's my logic. I think if you're going to sack a manager during the international break, I think that does make some sense because you've got 2 weeks to try and get an idea of what you're going to do. He's got 2 very difficult games after he comes back, which I think there's a chance they could lose both. But then there's maybe 2 more games before the next international break. If he survived those first 2, he might have, the chance to turn it around in the next 2 before the next international break. So difficult to say, but you kind of do feel like they've got to pull something out of somewhere. Maybe do they have to go and get a draw at Brighton? I mean, they're in a position where they need a win, and these fixtures are not getting any nicer. I'm concerned for Wolves.
Yeah, very, very much so. And it's 21 goals in 7 games. Is even my maths works for that. 3 per game you're conceding. Which you're just going to get relegated with. You can't concede. You need to score 4 goals to win a game on average. So, Matt, I'm going to give Southampton a pass this week. Bearing in mind the ridiculous chasms in English football. You're away at Arsenal. You took the lead. You lost 3-1. It is what it is, isn't it? So I think we've talked long and hard about Southampton. I don't think we learned anything new. And I'm almost going to do the same for Palace, because we knew there were big hitters involved in the conversation this week. Palace at home to Liverpool and went under. So those are 3 of our 0-win teams. But let's move on to Ipswich, who are still not in the bottom 3, which is great, but still haven't won a game. But it wasn't good at West Ham. There were mistakes for a couple of goals. The numbers are not good, although, sometimes you look at the XG and a couple of the goals are tap-ins and there are a couple of scrambles, and you're like, okay, that explains it away. But still, that's the point of XG. It tells us it could have been 5-1, 6-1, or what have you. Liam Delap scored. That's good. Calvin Phillips seems to have London Stadium kryptonite, where he just can't play well there by the sounds of it. And as an Ipswich fan, and hopefully you'll be able to give a slightly more balanced view, I'm just desperate to get this first win now. It's just every week it goes now. All of those naysayers are being proved right, that it's so difficult to come up and compete and win games. And we'll talk about Leicester in a minute. The number is reducing now, and you wouldn't imagine Palace will stay on 0 wins. What is your take on a bad game, a bad weekend for Ipswich there?
Yeah, I didn't see it coming. Based on the performances and the results beforehand, I did not see that coming for Ipswich or West Ham. It's frustrating because I still think Ipswich have been pretty good this season, and been so close to winning on numerous occasions. To draw 4 games, 1 goal away in all 4 from getting that first win. They've only lost to Man City and Liverpool beforehand. So we got to this point, once you've drawn with Villa and drawn with Brighton, that we were like, it's been okay. The first win needs to come soon. But what I said last week was the narrative will change on what comes next. Will it be the first win or the next defeat? If you'd have beaten West Ham, you'd be, 12th or 13th or something, and we'd be saying, look at this, 5 games unbeaten or something. But, you lose it, and then you lose it in the manner you did as well. It's like, oh, okay, it takes a sharp turn downwards. You've got to, I think, especially given the positivity there has been at Ipswich, you've got to try and keep that going. You've got to look at, we're above the bottom 3. We've got some games coming that are winnable, but you do need to win one. You look at Everton at home and Brentford away. I mean, Brentford away is looking very tricky at the minute now.
And then Leicester at home is the next one as well, Matt. And Ipswich have been decent at home, but Matt, can I just flip the script on that? What if Ipswich go through those 3 games and it's still 0 wins?
It's difficult because it all depends on how many points. Say if somehow Ipswich draw all 3, all 3, we'd be like, okay, that's not too bad. But you can't draw yourself to safety. I mean, it keeps you moving a little bit, but you need that big win to sort of blast you forwards, and it gives you some rest by, because I'm not saying that Ipswich are playing for draws, but if they just keep getting draws, it means that when you do lose, it takes a big hit because you've not had that buffer built up by a win beforehand. So it's got to come soon, but you've also got to be so wary of what happens if you lose to Everton. That could be quite disastrous because they could move away from you. And also, like you've just said, Everton and Leicester are home games. You've got to capitalise on those. It's difficult. You need 1 win at least in those next 3, with preferably a draw on top as well, just to keep yourselves moving. Because I know, as I say, we can try and still be positive for Ipswich. I don't think Palace are going to be winless after 10, 12 games. They will finally get moving.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's frustrating because it feels like in the conversation about Ipswich, we have to kick the can down the road. It's like, we'll find out then. But, the proof's in the pudding. If we're still saying we'll find out then after 12, 15 games, that the thing we're going to find out is probably not going to be too pleasant. So let's hope Ipswich can accentuate the positives and jump back on that. I'm probably going to scan past Everton a little bit. 0-0 at home to Newcastle, survived the missed penalty, and there's a bit of a sense with Everton that they're moving towards being, they're unbeaten in 4 games, and there's points going on the board now. I think, let's call it unbeaten in 3 because one of them was a League Cup game in there against Southampton. Yeah, sorry. So we'll call it unbeaten in 3, but moving in the right direction. And like you've just said, Matt, Everton, big circle around Ipswich away, isn't it? Go and win that game. Second win, put some distance in. But let's talk about Leicester, because you've got to give credit where it's due. They are off the 0. They've got the first win. and I'm going to damn with faint praise here, because on the one hand, you look at the numbers and you say, that doesn't look very viable to me, Matt. You know, the keeper playing a blinder, scoring a worldie, and giving up 19 shots. But on the other hand, that's how you avoid relegation. You beat teams who are kind of better than you. You keep clean sheets. You take your chances. So you can frame that as oh, well, that's not going to happen very often. But go figure, if you're going to be a team that's struggling, that's probably how you're going to win games. So, yeah, I suppose we better give Leicester some praise and sort of tell me your thoughts on the underlying position.
Yeah, when we're looking at this relegation sandwich, as I keep calling it, I think the best way, the way to measure who's involved is probably looking at points per game. Anyone on or below 1 point per game, I'm considering involved. So after West Ham's win, we'll give them a break for a bit. You know, they've pushed away. I mean, even I suppose if Man United lose their next game, they'd be level on a point per game, but surely they won't be involved. I think right now we are quite clear on looking at this 6, and Leicester are top of this mini league, I guess you could say. There's been some decent performances lately, and I think a win was coming. I mean, credit to them for beating Bournemouth, because it's not that easy to beat Bournemouth. You know, Bournemouth have been great. They just smashed Southampton beforehand. And I can understand why some Leicester City fans might be frustrated with Steve Cooper, the style of football maybe. Some of them might think it's a bit strange that he's come to Leicester from Forest, if there is that little bit of a rivalry, I guess. But I really do like him. And I know he's not got the credit in the bank at Leicester that he did have at Forest. But I think if the Leicester fans are patient and willing to just accept this season, it's all about finishing above that bottom 3. Steve Cooper will give you a chance, especially now that you're not going to be getting a points deduction. So, well played. Great goal from Buonanotte. And, I mean, there's still some big games coming. You know, Leicester City going away to Ipswich. If they were to lose that, they could drop back into trouble. I think they could be around the relegation battle all season. But so long as they're keeping their heads above water, then that's great. And like I say, I think if the Leicester City fans can be patient and stick with Steve Cooper, I think they do have a real chance.
Yeah, let's round this out by me just having a little look ahead at some fixtures, Matt, because I think we get quite a few head-to-heads in the next year. It feels like there's a little chunk of the season now, and you already mentioned a couple of them. So next round, Ipswich, Everton, Southampton, Leicester, woof. Following round, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, which is your Steve Cooper. Obviously, we're not quite including Nottingham Forest in the kind of relegation sandwich right down the bottom there. But it'll still be an interesting one. Then the following week, Ipswich versus Leicester. Southampton versus Everton. So I think for the next few weeks, Matt, we're going to be using the term 6-pointer, must win, all of that good stuff. Feels like a really key time now, doesn't it?
It does. And I think we're due a few big results down there, because we've had so many draws that has not really helped us understand where this is going.
Struggling teams don't win games, Matt.
It is very true, I guess. I mean, I suppose knowing that you only get so many opportunities to win a game when you're a team down there in the Premier League, if you draw a head-to-head, is that a little bit of a loss? I suppose it depends on the context, because, as we said, Ipswich got that dramatic late equaliser at Southampton, which made it feel a bit more like a win. You feel like, once again, the pressure's always going to be on the teams that are in the bottom 3 to get out of there. And, you know, the teams that are above it, can they put some distance between themselves and that bottom 3? Once again, I know it can be nerve-wracking and nail-biting for the teams involved, but I will say, once again, as a neutral, I want to see the newly promoted teams having a chance of staying up, and the more teams involved, the better. Right now, I do think we're looking at 6 teams. It might be, as we say each week, that we might be down to just looking at 5 teams later on. Could be 7 teams if one more drops in. But really fascinating, and some big games coming. I can't wait.
Very much so. We will clip this out as ever for my channel here. So if you're watching this clip about the relegation zone, why not check out the whole podcast, the Premier League Check-In podcast. There's a full 30 minutes each week from myself and Matt SB.